Hello, Case for Interwebkaiju here, and this is Mothra. If somehow you haven't heard, Mothra is a giant moth, and the 1961 film of the same name is her debut. A crew is shipwrecked and then rescued from a previously thought abandoned island. Those crew members mentioned even though they were in a highly radioactive area, the reason why they say they survived without being affected was probably due to the juice that the natives made them drink. Eventually, there is an expedition to study the natives, and then the Shobijin are found and then later stolen from the island and put in a show. Mothra then comes to save them. The acting is well done, lots of familiar veteran faces here, and the characters are actually written as characters instead of just cardboard cutouts, and they're fairly memorable. I complain about unsteady camera work a lot, especially when it's added digitally. There's some actual unsteady footage here, but it's a POV shot, which is fine to be a little shaky, and here it's because they're in a helicopter, so it fits. There's also a lot of good steady shots going into and out of forests, as well as some cool sets. The kaiju effects are fine, the larva movement is the same iconic one we still see Mothra larvae do today, and the adult form's wings flap fluidly unlike many other flying monsters of the 60s and even afterwards. The wind she makes is shown constantly and I love it. Cars are always flying every which way. Most movies just do this when a flying monster first shows up and then stops, so it's refreshing to see it so often, but also just really reiterates how much damage Mothra is doing, even just by moving. There's some wires showing, but nothing major. As far as human villains in kaiju movies go, Nelson is one of my favorites. This is also the case for the human antagonist in Mothra's next movie, Mothra vs. Godzilla 64, as well. Nelson isn't a terribly deep character or anything, but he's memorable and is portrayed well. Lots of kaiju movies have child, or in this case baby might die scenes, but I think the one in this movie is the best. Somehow made me care about unestablished person. I love how just common folk and foreign police take care of Nelson. Everyone comes together and believes that regardless of whether or not Mothra will stop wrecking everything if the fairies are returned, Nelson should be stopped. There's a lot of cool scenes, some iconic, and obviously the Mothra song is something that has stood the test of time. There's another Mothra song that this movie ends on the fairy singing, and it's also very good, though not replicated as much. Some of the effects are great, like the hatching scene I showed earlier. You may have not even noticed the natives at the bottom, but they're there and they look good. I also really like this shot, where not only does it look cool, but it shows the Mothra larva following the fairies, which is exactly what she's doing. Just not so physically close. Yet. But there are plenty of blue screen effects that look bad. As do the Shobijin dolls. And I do mean a lot of questionable blue screen effects. Unbelievable dolls are less of a constant problem, but the ones coming out of tanks do kind of pull me out of the scene. Some other vehicles look unrealistic. Unfortunately for this scene, it's every car. At times, there's like a synth version of Mothra's song playing in the background, and it's quite annoying actually. It just doesn't sound pleasant, and it's not brief. There's also other synth or organ music that I just don't like. It seems so out of place in the movie, and I wouldn't enjoy those songs on their own either. The natives are kind of not good. They're just generic shirtless unkempt dudes gently clacking rocks when they should be angry, and they get massacred in bloodless machine gun slaughter. The lack of blood really makes this scene seem very odd. Also, their Polynesian blackface just doesn't look natural on most of them, just further hurting an already mostly universally pan technique. The camera seems to have had something on the lens for this shot. Also, this scene seems to flicker for some reason. There's some laughs, a lot of memorable scenes and characters. After watching a bunch of movies for the channel that were just okay or worse, I'm glad I picked Mothra because it reminded me that I love these movies. Even with constant questionable blue screen and dull effects, I loved watching this. Some scenes still feel magical even after all these years. I would highly recommend this movie, just be braced for those aforementioned bad effects. Thanks for watching.
Hey, don't do that, I told you! Mothra. Mothra? What's it mean? I don't know.
Mothra? Oh, and what is Mothra?